What if a 17-year-old black girl with zero legal training stood up in court and outsmarted a seasoned lawyer and a hard-nosed judge, all to protect her mother? Hey fam, I hope you and your loved ones are safe and well today, because what you're about to witness is more than a legal battle. It's a story of love, grit, justice, and a young woman who refused to stay quiet. This is the story of Theodora Carter, a teenage girl who didn't just walk into a courtroom. She walked into history. Let's begin. The courtroom buzzed with low whispers and the occasional shuffle of papers. Clinical lighting bounced off polished wooden benches, casting long shadows across tense faces. Every seat was filled. Every gaze pointed to the center of the room. A battle was about to begin. Sitting high on his bench was Judge Reynolds, a man known for his cold eyes, cutting remarks, and zero patience. He scanned the room like a hawk, gavel in hand, jaw locked, and then the heavy courtroom doors creaked open, heads turned, whispers stopped mid-sentence. A girl stepped in. She wasn't in heels. She wasn't in a pantsuit. She was wearing a too-big blazer, sneakers that squeaked with every step, and a nervous look that barely masked her fire. In one hand, she clutched a worn-out binder. In the other, her mother's fate. This was Theodora Carter, 17 years old, black, alone and unshakably determined. People murmured, some scoffed, others smirked. What is she doing here? Where's her lawyer? She must be lost. Judge Reynolds raised a brow. His lips curled into a faint smirk. This isn't the gymnasium, Miss Carter, he said, voice slicing through the room. Sure you're not lost on your way to cheerleading tryouts? Laughter broke out, loud, careless, confident. Leading the chorus was Franklin Moore, the landlord's attorney, white, mid-50s, wearing a tailored navy suit and a face that screamed old money and old power. His smirk was sharp, mocking, but Theodora didn't blink. She straightened her shoulders, tightened her grip on her binder, and looked directly at the judge. No, Your Honor, she said, her voice clear and steady. I'm here to defend my mother. Silence. A beat passed, then two, then three. The whole room held its breath, because in that moment, despite the blazer hanging off her shoulders and the fear dancing behind her eyes, Theodora didn't look like a scared kid. She looked like a fighter. But if you want to understand how Theodora Carter got to this moment, you've got to go back to a neighborhood that society forgot, back to a single mother doing everything she could to survive, back to a girl who refused to let the system erase her family. Before the courtroom, before the judge, before the suit that didn't fit, there was a small house at the edge of a broken street. It had peeling paint, a sagging porch, and a faucet that dripped no matter how tightly you turned the knob. But to Theodora and her mother, Angela, it was everything. Angela Carter was a warrior, a single black mother working 2 cleaning jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. She never complained, not even when her feet ached, not even when her pay was short. She came home every night with tired eyes and a smile that still managed to glow. Baby girl, she would say, pulling off her sneakers and collapsing onto the couch. We may not have much, but we got love, and that's more than money can buy. Theodora believed her. She studied hard, kept her head down, and dreamed big, because her mother told her that education was her way out of poverty, out of survival mode, out of fear. But one afternoon, everything changed. Angela came home to find a folded piece of paper stuck in the doorframe. She pulled it out, unfolded it slowly, and froze. It's an eviction notice, she whispered. Her fingers trembled, her voice cracked. But I paid, I know I paid. Theodora was at the kitchen table doing homework. She stood up, took the letter from her mother, and scanned it carefully. The more she read, the deeper her frown grew. This doesn't add up, she said. It doesn't even say how much you owe. Angela sank into a chair, rubbing her forehead. "You don't understand, baby. People like us. We don't win. They'll find a way to take everything no matter what we do." And just like that, her mother, the strongest person she knew, looked defeated, tired, beaten down by a system that never played fair. Theodora stared at the paper, then at her mother, then back at the paper. Her jaw tightened. Something inside her ignited. "If no one else is going to fight for us," she said, "I will." That night, while Angela sat on the couch staring blankly at the wall, Theodora walked over and sat beside her. "Mom," she said softly, "you've done everything for me. Now it's my turn to do something for you." Angela shook her head, her voice hollow. "Baby, you're just a girl. You can't fix this. These people, they've got lawyers, they've got money, they've got the system." Theodora didn't back down. "But what if they're wrong? What if I can prove it?" Angela let out a laugh, not because it was funny, but because it hurt. "Even if we could afford a lawyer, it wouldn't matter. They always win." Theodora's eyes locked with hers. "Then let me be the lawyer." Angela blinked. "What?" "Let me represent you," Theodora said. "I'll learn whatever I have to. I can't just watch them take our home." Silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Angela looked at her daughter, at the fire in her eyes, at the courage in her voice, and for the first time in days, maybe weeks, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Angela reached out and took Theodora's hand. "If you really think you can do this," she whispered, "then I'll stand beside you every step of the way." That night, while the city slept, Theodora opened her old laptop, pulled out a notebook, and began her journey. Search. How to fight an eviction. Search. Tenant rights. Search. What makes an eviction notice invalid? The legal terms were endless. The pages were dense. But she kept reading, not for a grade, not for glory, for her mother, for their home, for every Black woman who ever got told, "You don't belong." The days that followed were relentless. Each evening, Theodora cleared the kitchen table, not for dinner, but for battle. Stacks of borrowed law books, printouts of state housing regulations. Her binder filled with careful handwritten notes and highlighter marks in every shade she could find. The old kitchen light flickered above her, casting long shadows over the pages. But she didn't care. She was too focused, too fired up, too committed to understanding every inch of the legal battlefield they were walking into. Angela would peek in from the doorway sometimes, watching her daughter pore over the same pages again and again. Her heart was torn between pride and fear. She wanted to believe, but she knew how ruthless the system could be, how quick it was to silence people who didn't have power or privilege. One night, Angela stood in the doorway longer than usual. Theodora was hunched over a notebook, her eyes red, her pencil nearly worn to the nub. Angela stepped in. "Baby," she said gently, "you don't have to carry this alone. You've done more than I ever expected." Theodora looked up, her voice tired but firm. "If I don't do it, who will?" Angela's lips trembled. She walked over and placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Then show them what you're made of." That same night, when the house was quiet and the street outside lay still, Theodora stumbled on something huge. She was reading through a tenant rights guide online when a sentence jumped out at her. All eviction notices must be notarized by a certified practicing notary public at the time of issuance to be valid under state law. Her eyes widened. She grabbed the eviction notice, still pinned to the wall like a threat, and scanned it. There was a signature at the bottom, but something about it didn't sit right. Martha Allen. The name seemed oddly familiar. She typed it into her laptop, clicked, scrolled, searched, and then she found it. Martha Allen had officially retired as a notary 2 years ago. Her certification expired, her public record removed. Theodora's breath caught in her throat. "This isn't just a mistake," she whispered. "This is fraud." Her exhaustion vanished in an instant, replaced by a jolt of adrenaline. This wasn't just a technicality, it was the crack in the armor, and she had found it. From that night forward, she doubled down. The living room became her courtroom. She stood in front of the mirror, binder in hand, rehearsing arguments out loud. She practiced how to say objection. She practiced how to look confident even when her stomach churned. She practiced how to say her mother's name with pride in her voice, not fear. Angela would watch quietly, sometimes from behind the doorframe. She no longer saw just her daughter. She saw a defender. One night, Theodora was reorganizing her notes when Angela brought her a plate of food. She set it down gently, her voice soft. "Eat, baby. You need your strength." Theodora looked up and smiled faintly. "Thanks, Mom." But she didn't touch the food. She went back to her notes. Angela watched her for a moment, then said, "Even if this doesn't work, I'll still be proud. You've already done more than I ever thought possible." Theodora nodded slowly. "I'm not just doing this for us, Mom, because if we let them get away with it, they'll do it to somebody else, somebody who doesn't even know they're being played." Angela wiped away a tear. "Then go get 'em, baby girl." The night before the hearing, Theodora didn't sleep. She stayed at that kitchen table with her binder open, blazer hung over the back of her chair, and her heart pounding like a drum. She wasn't scared anymore. She was ready. The next morning, Theodora stood at the courthouse steps. The blazer still didn't fit. Her hands were cold, but her eyes, those sharp, fearless eyes, were locked on the courtroom doors. "Let's do this," she whispered. The day of the hearing dawned cloudy and heavy, as if the skies themselves were weighing in on the outcome. Theodora Carter, clad in her oversized blazer and clutching a binder bursting with evidence, stood before the courthouse steps. With a deep breath, she pushed forward into the charged room. Inside, the courtroom was a hive of hushed tension and palpable skepticism. At the front, Judge Reynolds sat behind a polished desk, his face set in a stern expression that had seen many cases, but perhaps none like this. On one side, Franklin Moore, the landlord's seasoned attorney, exuded an air of superiority with his well-tailored suit and condescending smirk. As the proceedings began, Judge Reynolds banged his gavel lightly, calling for order. "All rise," he intoned. The opposing counsel, Franklin Moore, was the first to speak. His voice, dripping with sarcasm, cut through the silence. "Ms. Carter," he began, his tone dripping with disbelief as he eyed the young defendant, "your argument is impressive for someone with no formal legal training. Yet one must wonder, how did you come by this knowledge? A quick Google search, perhaps?" A few scattered chuckles rose from the gallery, but Theodora's gaze remained fixed, unwavering. She straightened her posture and replied in a calm yet firm tone, "I did not come here by chance. I have studied the laws designed to protect families just like mine, and today I will prove that the eviction notice issued against us is nothing more than a fraudulent document designed to strip my mother of her home." Judge Reynolds leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Proceed," he said curtly. Theodora slowly opened her binder and held up the eviction notice for everyone to see. "Your Honor, this is the notice my family received. At first glance, it appears standard. However, notice the signature at the bottom, which is purportedly from a certified notary public, Martha Allen." She paused deliberately, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the room. "Upon investigation," she continued, "I discovered that Martha Allen retired 2 years prior to the issuance of this notice. In other words, the notary's signature is invalid and renders this document and the entire eviction process unlawful." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Franklin Moore's smirk faltered for a moment, but he recovered quickly. He adjusted his cufflinks and retorted, "Objection, Your Honor. Surely a minor clerical error, even if technical, does not nullify an entire legal proceeding. Payment issues, as we know, remain valid regardless of notarization. The judge's gaze shifted from Moore to Theodora. "Is that your contention?" he asked. "Absolutely," Theodora answered, her voice steady, as if she had rehearsed this exact moment 1,000 times. Under the State Tenant Protection Act and reinforced by established legal precedent, the validity of an eviction notice is contingent upon proper notarization. Since this notice fails that basic requirement, it is void. No law can justify the forced removal of a family from their home based on an invalid document. She then referenced specific passages from her printed materials. Section 58 clearly states that any eviction notice must be notarized by an active, certified notary public. The court record of Martha Allen confirms her retirement, and thus this notice is nothing but fraud. A silence fell, heavy and reflective. Judge Reynolds exchanged a glance with a clerk who verified the printed evidence. Franklin Moore, now visibly irked, rose from his seat. "Ms. Carter, while your argument is indeed passionate, one must consider that procedural errors often do not affect the overall legal obligation of rent payment. The landlord insists that despite any minor errors, the eviction stands." Theodora met his challenge head on. "With all due respect, sir, this is not about whether the rent was paid on time. This is about the integrity of the legal process and the protection of vulnerable families. The very foundation of our tenant rights rests upon the assumption that all procedures are followed meticulously. When they are not, the system is rigged to favor the powerful over the powerless." Judge Reynolds finally spoke, his voice both measured and grave. "The evidence presented by Ms. Carter is indeed compelling. I have reviewed the documents, and the irregularity in the notarization is undeniable. This case raises serious concerns about the conduct of the landlord and the validity of the eviction process." The courtroom held its collective breath. "Today," the judge continued, "it is not merely about a delayed payment or a procedural misstep. It is about justice, the right of every family, regardless of their background, to live in the safety of their own home. The fraudulent nature of this notice undermines the entire eviction and must not stand." A murmur of agreement swept through the gallery. Franklin Moore's face tightened. Even Judge Reynolds' stern demeanor softened ever so slightly, revealing a spark of respect for the young defender's courage. "Therefore," Judge Reynolds announced, his gavel tapping decisively, "this eviction notice is hereby declared invalid. The plaintiff is ordered to compensate the Carter family for wrongful eviction and the emotional distress inflicted upon them." At that moment, a wave of relief and vindication washed over everyone present. Angela Carter, seated in the back, could barely hold back her tears as she reached for Theodora's hand. Theodora, though visibly exhausted, allowed a small, triumphant smile to break through. Her careful research, unwavering determination, and passionate plea had turned the tide. In this courtroom drama, Theodora was right. She fought for her mother's dignity and exposed the fraudulent practices that targeted her family. Franklin Moore, and by extension the system, were wrong, relying on outdated, prejudiced assumptions and procedural shortcuts to oppress those least able to defend themselves. The underlying reason behind their actions? A system steeped in injustice, where power and privilege often silence voices that challenge it. Theodora's actions revealed that integrity and truth are the only weapons that can break these chains. This case teaches us that justice must be accessible to all, and no one, regardless of age, race, or background, should be silenced. If Theodora's journey has inspired you, if it has ignited a fire for truth and equality within you, then let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts on why integrity matters in our legal system. Did you find her courage as a beacon of hope? Or do you believe the system still has far too many loopholes? Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story of resilience. Subscribe to our channel, Black Women, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story of courage and justice. Together, let's stand up and ensure that every voice is heard and every injustice is challenged.